How do you think America should use its power? We have control of the seas. And historically, the way that you determined what international waters meant was how far a cannon could reach. Back in the day, the Brits and the Dutch had an argument about this, and it became the law that no nation, no prince could challenge farther into the sea than he could command with a cannon. So if your cannon could reach 3 miles into the sea, that's where international water started, after that 3 miles. In the United States, we kind of got control of the sea. And from there, we can launch our helicopters, strike nuclear sites, and if we choose as a nation, go and get the bad guy. And a lot of people accuse the current administration with not having a clear policy about this. They'll say, this is just confused. You were America first. You used to say no regime change. You're not an interventionist. And then you're going to go get this guy and put him in a jumpsuit in Brooklyn? Is there even a Trump doctrine? Because the so-called experts at places like Foreign Policy Magazine say this is just the age of chaos. But the Trump movement has a distrust of these so-called experts. A distrust of places like the Harvard Center for International Development, where you study norms in India as a part of politics. You study them. Or Donald Rothwell from the Australian National University. He's one of Australia's leading experts in international law with a focus on the law of the sea and international law. So this expert in international law said that the U.S. violated the international law in Venezuela. Or experts in international government, like people at the UN who say, we condemn Venezuela stuff. French UN ambassador said, it's chipping away at the very foundation of the international order. And I was having fun in my research, so I looked up, okay, well, who is this French UN ambassador? And this is him here. His name is Jérôme Bonifant. So who is this Jérôme Bonifant, this UN guy who says that this is unacceptable? Well, he's currently the French ambassador to the United Nations. Before that, he was Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Before that, ambassador to Madrid, ambassador to New Delhi, and before that, advisor for global affairs, and before that, went to a fancy school. These are exactly the kind of people who study international norms at Harvard. But the people making the decisions in the Trump administrations are people like Jared Isaacman, the billionaire high school dropout who is now leading NASA and the US's drive to take the moon. He is a billionaire who built the world's largest private air force. He's not the kind of guy that studies norms. He's the kind of guy that builds things. Or Scott Bessent, a legendary trader, a very effective person. And that is what our current administration values, effectiveness. So when Marco Rubio says, listen, we went into Venezuela, we got their oil, they're not going to be able to move forward until our interests are met. And that makes sense for America. And furthermore, they would say, we earned it. It was an operation that involved 150 aircraft, satellites, intelligence. We even built a replica of Maduro's compound in Kentucky until the U.S. Special Ops who did this could do the mission blindfolded. And then they would say, we sent in our machinery with the Delta Force and Intel and all this stuff coordinated, and we got the bad guy who was doing bad things for our country. And this was over in 2.5 hours. They would say this is nothing like Afghanistan. Yes, it was a war action, but it was not 20 years and trillions of dollars in Afghanistan causing inflation to America and regular Americans having to go on multiple tours to Afghanistan. This was a precision thing that was over in 2.5 hours. Just like when we struck these key nuclear sites in Iran, took our stealth bombers, took it out, or used our satellite-guided missiles to take out Venezuelan drug boats, or used a drone strike to take out a high-value target in Iran, or to strike ISIS as they persecuted Christians in Nigeria. This use of force is totally different than 20 years and trillions of dollars in Afghanistan. They would say these are elite units like the Delta Force, people who signed up for this stuff. It's the use of super advanced military technology like stealth bombers. So this use of force is surgical, high-tech, and we're proving that we're pretty good at it, and a lot of people like it. Obviously, Americans like feeling confident in their military. They like seeing bravery. They like seeing the bad guy go down and changing the geopolitical chessboard in 2.5 hours. But people like the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the UK says this is a breach of international law. It's unacceptable. Or the chair of the Left Party in Germany says this is unacceptable. But the problem is, just a couple of years ago, Germany only had 2 days of ammunition for their entire military. Apparently, if we didn't go and backstop Europe, they would falter within weeks. So when you look at the Ukraine conflict, here's Ukraine, here's Moscow, there's Berlin. This is fundamentally a conflict in Europe's backyard. But it looks like you're unable to really do anything about it. And a lot of people inside the US look at that situation and say, this is not to be mean, it is just reality. So in a lot of ways, you guys, you didn't earn your seat at the table. All you've got is your words. We've got people who build and do. That the reason we have the only blue water navy in the world is that we here in America, we prioritize building. That's why our GDP is the blue line, theirs is the red line. If you look closely, you can spot a trend. There are a lot of people in America who look out and say, listen, you're busy regulating artificial intelligence. We're busy steering our top talent towards defense technologies so that our society can completely change the game when we need to and make sure that the bad guys go down. But are the people who take that attitude engaging in a double standard? Is that some type of American exceptionalism where we don't have to play by the rules but other people do? I will say that Ben Franklin, who is, in my opinion, the most important person to the DNA of America, was an anti-elitist. He was a person with limited formal education and effectively self-taught, and then became the most important scientist, if not person, of his age, even learning how to harness electricity among his many innovations. In many ways, our modern-day Ben Franklin is Elon Musk, a largely self-taught person. He does not have a degree in rocket science. Meanwhile, on the other side, you have limited social mobility in Europe. You have a place with literal kings who were born and now is the world's largest landowner with 6.6 billion acres. Maybe what's exceptional about America is that nowhere in our history did we have kings and aristocrats to limit social mobility, and instead we prioritize building things where you can have a high school dropout billionaire that builds the largest private air force in the world and goes on to lead NASA. Jerome Bonifant's resume is fundamentally a path from elite school into elite government to the UN to then criticize how Trump is not doing things right. But Donald Trump sees himself as the leader of a movement. This is an article from 2016 when he said, it's not going to be about me. I want this to be about common sense. He's a populist who wants to reflect the will of the people. We all know he pays attention to social media and to the news, and he sees that using our elite technology to go get the bad guy and advance American interests without getting into a 20-year multi-trillion-dollar war is very popular. It doesn't hit anybody at home. It doesn't involve people going over for multiple tours in another nation. It's elite people doing what they signed up to do. In many ways, it's just common sense. If you guys want to criticize, you're going to have to earn your seat at the table, because currently your canon can't extend that far. And that's just reality, and I'm not going to ignore that. So do you think that we should use American force to enforce an international rules-based order where we listen to the so-called experts like Jerome Bonifant? Should we use our dominant force to set out a clear doctrine of how we want things to work? Or should we just use our common sense? And if we really need to, when diplomatic channels have not worked out, go and get the bad guy. We don't need approval from the international order. What do you think?